So this video is in response to Travis Hovenden, who asked me to make a video to show how to make sprites for FFO or Terulia. I've been putting this off for a while because I had some bugs to deal with Terulia's custom icon system. That's been resolved, but as a consequence, the whole system for uploading icons to Terulia has been changed. So, depending on what system you're preparing icons for, your mileage will vary substantially. So in going back through and trying to answer this question, it seems like the thing that Travis is most interested in is how to actually create these icons. So I think for that the best guides are still from the old forums. So I'll be putting links to all of these things in the description. And I'll be doing some minimal editing of this video, so excuse me if I stumble over my words. Anyway, this is the unique icon board from the old subforums, or the old forums. And there are a couple of really fantastic guides here. Unfortunately, some of the images are now gone, but the ones you want to pay attention to are Garl's Complete Guide to Iconing, which is a very detailed walkthrough, and also Iconing for the Desperate, which has a lot of more fine detail to it, I think. Now, I'm just going to walk through these two posts very quickly. So Iconing for the Desperate is just a walkthrough, assuming you're starting from zero and trying to conceptualize an icon and figure out exactly how you're going to do it. Now, at the time, especially here in these old forums, there were a lot of very specific details that went into any particular icon. So it had to have a certain number of states, and the states had to be in a certain particular way, and depending on if you're using the icon converter or not, those states had to have certain substates and a certain number of frames, and the names had to be labeled in a certain way. So I'm going to ignore all of that because that may or may not apply to you depending on what you're submitting these icons to. For Terulia, all of that has gone out the window, so you can ignore all that if you're trying to make something for Terulia. But assuming you're trying to make something for one of the current hosted versions of FFO, you might still need to do some of this. So Emulsifier's walkthrough here is basically taking the concept and then expanding on it first from an outline, making sure the proportions look good, and then finally rounding it out with shading and that sort of thing. So definitely read through this if you're a beginner and just getting into icon work. And I'll tell you personally, I'm not that great at working with icons, which is why my Gaku icon looks something like an Indian, as most people like to point out, whereas that's not at all what he was supposed to look like. But that's just me. So another really good icon walkthrough here is the one posted by Garl. Now there are a lot of very technical details here that, again, you may or may not need, but some of the core background information here is very important, and I think it's worth reading through just for that information. And you'll notice that some of the images seem to be missing, so apparently these were linked to places that are no longer hosting images, or for whatever reason they're just not showing up anymore. But if you scroll down here to SARM's Guide to 2x2 Pixel Perfection, I think this is perhaps the most important thing you can get from this whole topic. And this is, the difference between the overworld and the battle states. Is in the battle states you have pixels which are actually 1 pixel, versus the overworld states, which are the standard Nintendo Final Fantasy or Dragon Warriors style 2x2 pixels, which is the pixels themselves are substantially larger. So the easiest way, as is pointed out here, to make sure that your icon is actually a 2x2 icon is to go into a program like Paint and smash your icon down to 16 by 16 and then expand it back to the full 32 by 32. Now, again, a lot of this stuff doesn't really apply anymore. So I just wanted to point out a few other things for you here. So here in my hosted files on the Terulia forums, I've got two different file sets here. One is PC icons and the other is Terulia icons. So here's PC icons, and basically it's every single icon set used in FFO as far as the stock PC icons. So I'll be putting this link in the description too. Basically, you can just open any file you like and you can see what's there, and I'll be pointing out some of the key features here. So assuming you want and FFO style, just standard icon. Well, you'll notice here this is the overworld icon. There's only a single state. Now you have the option of making more, but Beyond handles this single state, even though it's a walking state. If you are standing still, then you only get the first frame of that animation. So this is what most people tend to do. Also, you notice it only has 4 directions. And the way Beyond handles this, if you are, let's say, going west, and then you begin going northwest, you will keep walking in that westward direction as far as the icon is concerned. Now, if you go past north, and then you go back to northwest, you'll continue walking north. So basically, the last cardinal direction that you walked in becomes the default as long as you don't hit a new cardinal direction, which is a really nice feature, I think. Now, if you have a slightly more in-depth icon, then the standard is that north through southeast, or let me rephrase that, north and northeast. Let me rephrase that. North and northeast will have the same icon set. East and southeast will be the same. South and southwest will be the same. And then west and northwest will be the same. So this is the standard for battle icons and so on. And you see the limiting issue here then is that if you're walking south and then you go southeast, all of a sudden you're going to be walking east, which is fine, but it tends to look better if you follow this sort of mechanic. Now, there are limitations to that depending on the type of icon you're using, but if you're using the standard overworld style, using either the Final Fantasy or Dragon Warrior style, the 2x2, then you're probably going to want to go with the 4 directions. So other than that, there's not really anything there for the overworld icons, so fairly simple. But as I said, the easiest way to make sure that your icon qualifies and actually has the large pixels as intended is to take that full image, copy paste it into something like Paint, and make sure that when you stretch it and then re-expand it, you get the same exact image back. So obviously, if we had this particular image here where everything's been shifted 1 pixel to the left, this is no longer 2x2, because if you look at the pixels on the left, these are now sharing pixels with the ones next to them. So if I were to take this, move it into Paint, and then re-expand it, there would be some distortion there. So that's another way you can check yourself once you're finished. Usually people who are experienced with working on icons like this for the Terulia and FFO style can pick that out very quickly for you. So next, all of the icons here, the stock male icons at least, have the same format and setup. There are some additional optional states, but this is the standard setup for any particular icon. And what you'll notice is, actually these only have 4 directions, but most of the time most people have full 8 directions for their icons. And the reason why, as I pointed out, if you're going in cardinal direction and then you go off of that cardinal direction by 45 degrees, there's a possibility you can get some really weird moonwalking effects if you have only 4 directions in your battle states. For example, if you are walking, let's say, north, so you're walking north and you've got this icon, you're walking north, and then you start going northwest, you're still going to be looking to the right if you only have 4 icon states here, or 4 directions. So you're going to be looking to the right even as you're moving to the left. It's going to be this weird moonwalking effect. So the standard now is to actually have 8 states, and if you have only 2 directions as you do with the battle icons, then north, northeast, east, and southeast all face to the right, whereas south, southwest, west, and northwest all face to the left. And the easiest way to do this is just to have, say your one direction state. Let's say north is the one you're actually editing, and then once you're done, you'll take it, copy paste into, let's say, south. You'll take it, flip it backwards, and then you just copy north onto all the other 3 that correspond with that direction. You copy south onto the other 3 that correspond with that direction. It doesn't take very much time at all. So you have to be aware of that distinction if and when you get to that point. So unfortunately, when you have additional icon states, you can't use that same convention as we did with the overworld state. So again, with the overworld, we have just a single icon state. It's a movement state, and if you're not moving, that first frame is all that you see, so you don't actually see someone walking in place like you would with a Dragon Warrior game. Now with a battle state with multiple icon states, that doesn't work. So you actually have to have a separate standing still state and a separate movement state, which you toggle by double clicking where the name would be. So if you don't have any additional effects, that's the icon state with no name, so it's just the blank icon state. And obviously if you're walking, you're going to have some animation here. Now my recommendation is to have a 2-frame delay between states. If you make it a 1-frame delay, it's going to make you look like you're running everywhere, which is probably not going to be a good thing. So some people like it. Personally, I think it's a bit odd. But anyway, the standard is to have the same walking or the standing still frame as your first state in the animation, and then the second one would be some slight variation off of that, and that gives you your nice sort of walking animation as you're moving around. Attack is the next set, and the order isn't so critical, but this is just sort of the convention. So standing and walking is first, and attack is second. And for attack, you need to have, most importantly, the arm movement, because this specifically applies to hitting someone over the head with a hammer or an axe or whatever you're attacking with. So the corresponding animation from the weapon is in the first frame, the weapon is sticking out to the front. In the second frame, the weapon is now sticking out the back, and then back to the front, out the back, and back to the front. So basically you have hitting, recoiling, hitting, recoiling, and hitting again. So for every single attack state, you're going to have exactly 10 animation frame time units total, and it's going to be 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, and there's no real variation on this just because of the way the attack animations work. Now for the movement attack state, you're going to have exactly the same thing. And it's because if you have a variation between them, it's going to look really, really awkward if you're stepping into your attack. You just won't attack. It'll just show you as walking instead. So these need to be the same. Whatever you have here, you just copy it, and then you toggle the movement state here, and then you're done. Victory is whatever you want it to be. Really, this is where you have probably your most leeway out of everything. So some people have really, really elaborate animations, which I'll show you some examples of later. But this is just the standard. All of the Final Fantasy based stock sort of characters have this sort of really basic animation. For the wizards, it tends to be their cast state as part of the victory animation. That's just the way it works. Wounded, obviously, you're going to be just shorter in vertical space than you would be standing up. And there's a lot of leeway here, but you have to realize that wounded applies to a number of different states. So if you are, just like dead does, same idea. So wounded works for being paralyzed, I believe. It also works for being held, I'm pretty sure. So you don't want to have something in your wounded state that makes you look like you're bleeding out necessarily, because that won't always apply. Just like in the dead state, there have been people in the past who, put little X's over their eyes, that sort of thing. It doesn't always work, because if you're asleep, you don't want to have X's over your eyes. There's opportunity to have additional states too. The standard hurt state is just a flashing. Now this flashing can be replaced by potentially anything. If you want to go with the newer style, then you would have a sort of a, like an image of you being hurt, and then maybe you jostle back and forth, which I'll show you some examples of that too. Hurt for movement is the same, for the same reason as the attack. Otherwise you'd be walking while hurt and not really show that you're being hurt. Dead, the dead state is a standard that must be there. The cast state has a defined limit of 10 time units. However you want to split these up is up to you, but it must add up to 10, and that's just because when you're actually casting something, the cast animation itself lasts for 10 units. So one thing to note here is if you have just a single frame, and you'll notice here this frame is exactly the same as the one here on top of it, so I'm just copy pasting, it's exactly the same. Now if you have just a single frame in an animation, it ceases to be an animation, unfortunately. So you can't have just a number 10 up on top. You have to actually make it 2 frames and then have time delays. Otherwise you don't get a time delay at all. It counts as a single frame. So that's something to be aware of. But this is also a situation where a lot of people like to customize. So it's 10 time units, and you can do whatever you want in those 10 time units. But this is just the simplest way to do it, demonstrated here. So this is the standard icon, including all of the states that absolutely must be present. So you've got standing, you got walking, attack with or without movement, victory, wounded, hurt with or without movement, a dead state, and then a cast state. All right, let's move on. Last is the face state, which, depending on who you're making icons for, at minimum needs two things. First, you need an actual walking state, which, if you don't have any additional information, doubles as the face, and you also need a dead state. Alright, so that's the standard icon set. Just for comparison, this is the Terulia icon set, and you'll notice it's basically the same concept here. So you got standing, you got walking, attack with or without movement, victory, wounded, hurt with or without movement, dead, and cast. And you'll probably notice that the color scheme here is a little bit odd, and that's just because Terulia recolors everything, so it's easiest to see what's going to be recolored if you make them vastly different colors in the actual base icon. You'll also see there's this bit of an outline here, which is a feature that was added after the original FFO icons were made. And this is some icons are so small they're a bit hard to click, so it's just an added radius of very, very light intensity that you can't even see if you're looking at it, but if you click on it, it will actually register as having clicked on the character. So this is done automatically for you, especially in the new versions of the Terulia icon system. So for face, if you're making icons for Terulia, you do need a few extra things. So again, we have the standing state, the dead state, and in this case we have the cast state actually included within the icon itself for the face. And the face here is just a copy of the standing state, but this is also a place where most people like to customize. And as far as walking, we've got the same basic idea. So just 2 frames, 4 directions, and set as movement state. So Beyond will automatically have you facing in the right direction as you're walking around. Alright, so that's the sort of standard setup, and as I mentioned, I'll be putting links to both of these in the description to the video. Let's take a look at some more customized things. So a lot of these are sort of older icons. Let's see. Hovenden, he tends to make pretty nice icons. So here's Hovenden. This is just one particular version. His standard walking overworld state. And for working with Terulia, I'm trying to go with less shading and more of that sort of old 8-bit feel without necessarily being 8-bit, but you know, if you want to do shading and stuff, that's fine. I'm not going to hold it against you. Just, you know, make sure it looks reasonable for the world at large. Most important thing here is obviously the 2x2 aspect, which again, you can take this into Paint, trim it down to 16 by 16, that is scale it down to 16 by 16, and then scale it back, and you'll see it looks exactly the same. So if that's not the case, then you know you have a problem with your icon. So this is a more detailed battle icon setup, which let me compare real quick to the stock ones here. So I'll pull up PC icons again. Close that. Alright, so again, here on top we've got the Black Mage, which is the same exact system as in Terulia, and here on the bottom we've got the Hovenden created custom icon. So again, we've got standing, we got walking, and here he's actually going with 4 states, so depending on which state it's on, the arms will be swinging in opposite directions, which this tends to look pretty nice actually. Attack state, same basic idea. So here we've got, I'll move this over a little bit. So we've got 10 animation frames total, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, arms forward, arms back, and then the weapons will be swing in the corresponding manner. The moving attack is exactly the same. You'll notice even the way the legs are set is exactly the same. And you don't want to have this different, because if it is, then you'll be kind of warping around. It looks really bizarre. So again, victory state is where a lot of people like to customize. So here we've got a very very detailed animation for the victory state, which you know, looks pretty cool, I think. Just be aware that once the animation finishes, it does loop, so you don't want to have your character kind of warping back and forth during the victory state if you can help it. For wounded state, some people like to put a little animation here. In this case, there isn't one, but clearly tell that this character is hurt in some manner. Next is the hurt state, and this is sort of the new style where the character actually shows that they're in pain, they're recoiling in some manner, and this is actually the Final Fantasy 2/4 style, so you can see the characters now jostling back and forth, and here the mirror image is the north and east state. Hurt is same exact thing. Hurt movement and regular are the same. I'm not sure if I mentioned, but the total frame animation length here needs to be 5 frames, frame time units, so that's important. The dead state here, not much to really talk about except it's a dead state. And then we have cast, which is the last of the obligatory ones, so again 2 frames of 5 for 10 total. So now we have some optional states which were added to this particular icon. And the convention has always been that for additional icon states you put them in alphabetical order, and there are a number of states that you can add, and they're mentioned in the 2 posts that I mentioned earlier. So some examples are arm lock, kick, sleep, chant, and ready are here. Ready is one of the more common ones. Let's see what else. There's something like paralyzed, but I forget exactly what it's called. I haven't messed with it in a while. But anyway, chant is the state that you go into as you're preparing to cast a spell. That is that very short cooldown time. So here's chanting, you see. And then the ready state is the state you enter right before you hit someone over the head with a hammer. So right before you attack or undertake some non-spell action, this is the frame that comes up. So that's a very useful one to have. And if you have that ready state, that usually ends up going in your face icon as well. So there are a few additional states that are suitable for the face icon. There are some that aren't. Let's see, let's pull up the face icon here. So custom face icon, so again, standing, dead, cast, ready. Cast and ready are sort of optional, and the face is the one where a lot of people like to customize. Now, one thing to note here is that these are single frames. These are not animations. These are not multiple directions. All you need is the leftward facing icon, and that just makes things a little bit, keeps the icon file sizes a bit smaller. It makes them, not quite as long of a download. And for the way the new Terulia system works, it's very important to make sure the download and the file sizes are fairly small. Alright, so let's see if we can pull up one of Garl's. His tend to be good example ones. Alright, so Garl B. Let's start with just Garl. So this is his standard moving state, 2 frames. If he's standing still, it's this one. If he's walking, it goes back and forth, so no issues there. Garl B, I think, no, I didn't actually have that example I was looking for. But anyway, you see a lot of the custom optional states here, which is one of the things I want to point out. So again, standing still, walking, attack, attack, victory. He actually has a victory moving state, which is okay, I guess, but it's not really essential. What this basically does is if he's gone into victory state and he's walking, it'll just keep doing the animation. Otherwise, you'll stop the victory animation to walk. So this is actually okay to do, but it is sort of an optional thing. Next is wounded. And here it appears to be a small animation with that, which is perfectly fine. Hurt and hurt. Just something to indicate that he's actually being hurt. Dead, cast. You can see here, even though these are sort of non-standard animation frame lengths, you have 1, 1, 1, and 7, so that still adds up to 10. And then we have all the custom ones. So chant, confuse is an icon state you go into, obviously, when you're confused. Fear, obvious as well. Hold is when you're being held. Ready is the optional one that most people like to add. Sleep is another optional one, and stun is a last one. So he went all out with this icon, which is great. But of course you don't have to do that, that's all optional. Now what I was hoping to find for you, which I'm not sure I can actually find, is an example of a custom standing still state, which I'll look around for one here real quick. Let's see. one's likely to be a good one. And again, this is not necessarily the most recent icon that everyone had, but it is one particular set that I've kept. So let's see if this is one. Alright, so here, this is Kumog. And for his standing still state, it's actually an animation. So every couple of seconds he's going to blink and move around, which is fine. That's one option, but the base of this state should be standing still. That's the important thing here. For movement, it's sort of the same as Garl's. Let's see what we have for victory. Here we have a very elaborate victory sort of dance, slamming a sword into the ground. So again, note that the animation loops, and you can see how it looks when it loops by watching here. Wounded, nothing special there. And alright, so no issues there. Now, one thing I noticed in looking at these is that just about all of these icons only have 4 directions, which is not actually the way we're doing things now. So rather than having 4 directions, these should all be 8. And as I said, north, northeast, east, and southeast all look to the right. South, southwest, west, and northwest all look to the left. And the importance of that is just convention and making sure people don't moonwalk all over the place. It tends to look better if you do it that way. Otherwise, you have the possibility of moonwalking. Alright, what else? Alright, so I think that's pretty good for some examples. Let's see, this might be another good one. So some different ways you can show the effects. And if you're going to have... Oh, yeah, a couple other things. In your wounded state, you must look wounded. There have been people in the past, for example, Dream, who, are convinced he'd never be wounded. So you absolutely must have a wounded state, even if you don't think your character is ever going to be wounded. And your death state must show you in some sort of prone, dead position. You can't be, standing upright in your dead state. So that's an important distinction. If you have a sleep state, that's fine, but your sleep state can't be your dead state. And what I mean is you can't have Z's over your head when you're dead. And obviously any other states that you add, must be differentiated in some way. So as far as the actual mechanics of making an icon, I think probably the easiest thing to do is to take one of the stock icons and then just begin editing things. So usually you want to start with, sort of the standard standing there looking to the left frame, and then conceptualize what you want to change, make some changes, and then obviously edit that for everything else. But what you want to avoid doing is just recoloring something, because this is completely pointless, and obviously it's still Black Mage, right? So this is not a suitable icon edit, but note also that just swapping a few things around, for example, if I were to go like that, we move 1 pixel to the left. Technically it's a different icon, but that's still not a suitable custom icon because it's very clearly still just the base icon edited slightly. So whatever you change, you want to make sure that it's changed in such a way that you can't obviously tell what it's based off of. So if that means getting rid of the hat, swapping it out with something else, changing the robes to something different, making, it's easiest just to start with an outline and then fill in from there. But even keeping the outline is not necessarily the best thing to do. Alright, so that's sort of the standard approach to creating icons, and depending on who you're submitting it to, what you will do next will vary a great deal. So for the old system, remember well, maybe you don't remember, but we had the icons where people would submit their icons and then the checkers would check them and, tell the problems, and then people would go back and complain and then fix the problems, and then someone else would post it again, and eventually we get in the game. So if you are playing Drissian's server, then you need to figure out how they're doing their icon uploads, because I'm not in charge of that. I don't even know if they have the in-game icon upload system. They might or they might not. If they have the in-game upload icon system, then you probably need to go through and read over a lot of these specifics here in this particular post as far as how to name things, the actual order of the icon states, that sort of thing, because that's actually important if you're using that particular system. Now for my sort of now underground FFO version, I'm not uploading icons because I'm not even messing with that version. So if you happen to play it, then what you play on it is just what you're stuck with. If you if you have an icon that's already set to go, I mean, I wouldn't mind uploading it, but it's like my lowest priority of the absolute lowest priority. Try not to abuse that privilege if you decide to upload a custom icon to my servers. Alright, so the last thing I want to point out, since you asked about Terulia, is how this works in Terulia. So what I have here is just particular, well, here I am, so walking around in Terulia, and this is just a very hideous color scheme that I set up. So one thing I want to do in Terulia, and I don't know if you're really interested in this or not, but one thing I want to do is make this as easy as possible for people to sort of manage on their own. And that is, if I get dragged into, icon edit arguments, then that, number one, eats up my time, and number two is a waste of everyone's time. So the whole point of the system that I created here was to make this as seamless as possible. So here, for example, I'm going to pull up my icon color scheme. So that is, through the forums I can now pull up my in-game color scheme, which is really convenient for me. Alright, so let me resize things a little bit here. We can see what's going on. Alright, so this is my in-game color scheme, and I'm just going to change things slightly. So clearly it's going to be a different color now, and click recolor and watch what happens over here. So recolor, and now I'm recolored. So as you might be aware, Terulia works on a number of different shards. So if you are logged in on any of the shards, whenever that's updated, you will be updated in-game very quickly. So that's very convenient, and it makes it easy if someone messes up their color or whatever, you can change it for them. Alright, so next is the custom icon upload system, which as you might be aware, I'm a fan of Twilight, so I'll be uploading my icon as Twilight. And if you read over the old posts about exactly how you have to format your icon and everything, the Terulia system is based on that, but a little bit different. So what I'm going to show you here is just how easily this works. So I've got here my overworld, the face, and the battle. So we'll go overworld first. So now I'm here listed, the overworld is uploaded, and it's actually downloaded it into the game. But because I don't have all three, it hasn't actually changed my icon yet. So next we'll go face. Now the face is uploaded, and next we'll go the battle state, upload, and just like that, my character has changed to Twilight Sparkle. So now in game I'm Twilight running around. And if I wanted to, I could then click this box here, click delete, and that would go back to whatever it was before. But let me just quickly show you how this works on the forums in case you're interested. Maybe you're not, but anyway. Alright, so overworld is here, and because this is a pony icon, it's slightly different. So for the walking state, this is a little bit more elaborate, and most of these are taken from desktop ponies and just resized. So if you want to do that, I'll show you how. But typically you go about 30% of the original size in a program like GIF Movie Maker. So this is the new style, though. That is northeast, and southeast are all facing right. Southwest, northwest, west, and south all face left. And because there are no overworld states for Twilight or the ponies, then obviously this takes the battle form, but otherwise it's the same. If this were a standard overworld style, icon, it would just be 4 directions, but obviously because it's the battle style, it has 8. And in this case, it has a standing still frame as well. I don't think that's a very important distinction in this case, but it's sort of optional. Alright, so for battle, same basic idea. We have standing still, we have walking, and again we have 8 directions here. So a little bit different from some of the others that I showed you. Attack and attack, these are both identical, 10 frames total. Victory is an elaborate animation. And we have victory movement, which is, in this case, actually movement, because when testing this out, I found that it looks really bizarre when this animation is just floating around the map. So in this case, this animation only takes place if standing still. Wounded is wounded. Wounded movement is an actual movement state. Hurt, and the reason for that is if you make a wounded movement state, then you'll just kind of glide around the map in your movement state. or in your wounded state, which looks really bizarre. So hurt is hurt, 5 frames total. Dead is dead. Cast is one of the mandatory ones here, 10 frames total. And then ready is an optional one, which here is a short animation. So this is how you can create a pony icon, at least, if you're interested in that sort of thing. I've got several actually. I've just kind of made for other people, but they're fairly quick to make. So the point here is that if you are creating icons for Terulia, then there's a completely different system for uploading it than there used to be. And depending on who's actually uploading it for you, at the moment no one, but if and when that actually happens, there's a way to do that, and they will do it for you. And if you have any minor changes to make, it's really really straightforward to do that. So for example, if I wanted to I'm going to change my face icon to Luna, which I can upload that, and now all of a sudden I look like Luna, except it's just the face icon, so I have to actually say something. So here my face icon has changed to Luna, and that was done instantly in game, and whichever shard I happen to be in, that all happened instantaneously. So everything else is the same, but it's very easy to make minor updates and edits to icons in this particular way. So here I'm going to upload the Luna overworld, etc. This is all diagnostic stuff, just to make sure it's all working. Alright, so now I'm Luna in game, walking around, and again, didn't have to relog or anything, so that's just all automatic now. But again, if you are doing this for FFO, depending on if there is an in-game upload system or not, then you might have to edit your icon slightly. You might have to get someone to manually upload it for you. And if you're playing on Drissian's server, they're probably not going to be too keen on adding ponies, so I wouldn't go that route if you're going to their server. But that's up to you. So if you have any other questions, please let me know. But I think your best bet, honestly, is to read over these 2 particular posts on the old forums, which are very, very detailed, and even look over some of the other icons that were submitted at the time. Might give you some ideas. So yeah, thanks for watching.